you give them something to eat. And they're kind of in a hopeless situation. Like, we've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. There's no way that's going to happen. But the whole time, they're not realizing, well, their hope is in Jesus. They have everything they need in him. Do you think that maybe sometimes we forget that when we're going through life? We forget that Jesus is everything that we need?
I think in areas, especially hospitality, we don't often dare to imagine that we could really meet the need. We feel sort of insufficient to meet the needs of others. And so we don't hope in Jesus, and we feel also that concern about whether or not we could meet those needs. And I think the disciples felt that way. Like Jesus said, well, let's provide them with something to eat. And then they're like, we don't have the resources to do that. We couldn't do that well. And so they were at a loss.
Yeah, I think there are times when we're so focused on our physical reality, our physical world, that we forget that there's a world that's deeper to that, that's foundational to that. We forget the spiritual, and we become so focused on perhaps what we think science can prove, that we forget that what's foundational is that God, in the beginning God, made the heavens and the earth. Something came out of nothing. And we see that brought full circle from the spiritual through the physical realm, so to speak, at the feeding of the 5,000. And he says, there is hope in me. And that's what he's pointing to.
In America, that's a particularly difficult message to understand because of the impact that consumer culture has on us. And it convinces us that in order to be content, in order to be happy, in order to survive, you have to have a lot of stuff.
But again, Jesus is pointing to that reality that there is hope for now. It's something that I think Dallas Willard points to, and John Ortberg, and that sense of God is here and there is hope for living now, and we can rely on him and depend on him in every situation that we encounter.
Yeah, I think the hope now is very evident in this story, because 5 loaves, 2 fish, that's not going to do anything. But it said all 5,000, and that's just the men. We don't know the exact numbers. It's a lot more than that for sure. But it says that they were all satisfied. I read once that it was like, oh, everybody had a crumb and they were satisfied. I don't buy into that. A crumb's not going to fill up anybody, right? And they even took up 12 baskets full even after. So even if everybody had a little crumb, that's not going to give you 12 baskets full at the end. So I think it shows a lot of the hope that even then in that story that we have now, as well as the future, like you were talking about.
This is about the Lord doing his work and working through us as he did in feeding the 5,000 and providing. And it's about him using us, and not so much about a formula, but rather just doing what he calls us to do.
Love what Jesus is teaching the child who brought what would be essentially their lunch. I assume somewhere a mom packed a kid's lunch and sent him out for the day to play until the street lights came on, metaphorically speaking, of course. And he had his lunch, and he met this guy Jesus, who said, "I need food to feed these people." And he didn't have much, but something about Jesus compelled him to say, "He can provide what I need. He's sufficient for me." And he relinquished his lunch to Jesus.
And God can really multiply that investment. You might not feel like you have a lot to offer, but God will multiply that investment of those small things. We don't know how those small things can become a great miracle for someone who really needed just that small thing. It could become a great miracle what we perceive as something that's just a little gesture.
It takes some work to be able to say, "I give you my lunch." It takes some work of learning to trust God, learning to redefine what is enough. And like most things, the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more you can do. Some of the most generous people that I've ever met are people that you would not look at and say, "Oh, they're people of great wealth, therefore they're generous." No, they're people that have understood what they need and are willing to give out of whatever else they have to others, and they're incredibly generous people. They are exhibiting what that kid did with